today we're going to start building the cabinets, and got my daughter helping here. You might recognize her from her YouTube stuff on things, on gardening. So we got several cabinets to build. I made a sketch. Don't know if you can see this very well, but there's the sketch of the cabinets. And we're going to do the cabinet on the far right, the bandsaw cabinet. Got a sketch of that cabinet that I made. Other way. There we are. Scribbles and sketches. A lot of YouTubers don't talk about scribbles and sketches that they do. Yeah. They just do it, and nobody mentions the planning part.
There's a lot of little things to figure out, I'm finding out.
Yeah. So we were talking about joints that I want to use. There's many kinds of joints you can use. And I'll draw a joint here for you, because I wanted just a little more meat. We were going to do this, where that's the back piece and that's the side piece. Then we were going to put a pocket hole right here so we could glue and screw that joint. It's a lot faster. I don't have to make the groove, and it's just as strong.
So why have that extra space at the back?
Because if you get too close to the edge here, you could get tear out of this piece. So this gives you a little more meat behind it so you don't get tear out.
And what is tear out?
When the screw tears out of the wood.
Oh, so like if you screw too far in and it came out, or too much stress on the wood and it tears the screw out?
Too much stress.
Okay.
So, yep. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to lay it out on our plywood here and make some cuts and go from there. So, we're going to use a True Track straight edge. Most of you have seen the True Track advertised, and some people say, well, that's quite expensive for a straight edge, but for cutting plywood, it's way easier than trying to flop it up on your table saw. So for those of you who don't know how True Track works, you get a special base plate that comes on your saw, has some grooves in it here, and these grooves line up with the track itself. Here's a close-up of the track, so you can see the grooves in the track. The nice thing about this is that all you got to do is line up one edge with your marks on your plywood, and that's it. No clamping, no nothing, and it doesn't slide. It gives you a really clean edge on your plywood. That's why I like this thing. My daughter was asking me why we're laying this out the way we are. And the short answer is grain of the wood. We want to know which way the grain goes. If you were building this out of solid wood, not plywood, your boards would be longer and you join them to each other with the grain like so, right? Plywood, they lay it out with the long direction with the grain this way, not that way, okay? So in traditional cabinet making, the grain would be the long direction of your boards. And when we do the side pieces, the long direction is the vertical direction. So we lay out on the plywood for the grain going the long direction of the wood whenever possible. You can do it with plywood nowadays. You can do it the other way. But if you want it to look right, looking right's the important part. If you want it to look right, you need to have the grain going the long direction of the boards. So that's why we're laying it out the way we are. It does use a little bit more plywood. You have to think a little bit more about your layout. But in the end, it looks right. And if you're trying to make something that looks nice, you want it to look right. One thing I forgot to point out is with the grain of the wood and this system here, splintering of the wood is a problem, and they've got it pretty well worked out with the TrueTrack. But as we were setting up for our second cut here, I mentioned you want the TrueTrack on the side of the piece that you want to keep, because this rail right here keeps the wood from splintering. When you're cutting with the grain, that is along the length of the grain, when you're cutting along the grain, you don't have splintering near as much of a problem as if you're cutting perpendicular to the grain. So you really want to keep the TrueTrack on the side that you want to keep, that is your actual workpiece side. We are actually setting this up opposite of that, and we can do that because the grain is being cut with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so, and when you're cutting opposite and your TrueTrack's on the opposite side, remember your kerf of your blade to account for that in your cut. All right, let's keep cutting. Mistakes: measure twice, cut once. I measured twice, I cut once, and I still cut wrong. You can see by the mark here, I actually lined up my TrueTrack. See, there's where I was supposed to mark it, or cut it, and I lined it up wrong there and right there. So, time to recut. Two pieces. Well, measure twice, cut once, failed again. So we did our math and we said, oh, we need to take some off the edge of this for the hinges. What we failed to recognize is we had already cut this too small to begin with, and then we went and cut it even smaller. So, time to cut a new piece. Once again, these are shop cabinets.
Is nothing.
Okay, there.
It's silent.
I finished the cabinet. Got it up. Yay. Then I went to do this. I designed it to put my bandsaw in, right? Pick bandsaw up, put it in. What can I say? Measure again. Oh, here's the fix. The fix is not changing the cabinet. The fix is using that cabinet for a different purpose and making a new one for that spot. I was planning on putting cabinets right here above my miter saw, and it turns out that the dimensions of that cabinet are just about perfect for putting one right up there. So I'm going to take that cabinet, take it from the vertical, turn it horizontal, and then I'm going to make two new doors for it and do that. I also learned one other thing about my method of putting the cabinet up that I should have thought of before. So here's what I was talking about with mounting the cabinet. When I screwed it to the 2x6s there back, You see the little gap there that occurred? That's what happens when the plywood bows. I need to put a little spacer in the back to account for that. And that spacer will go right in that little groove right there. So there's just enough space. You can see that's a 1/2 inch gap I purposely left because I wanted more meat for the screws from the back piece going into the side piece. But when I did that, I need to put a little spacer back there so it doesn't bow the plywood. We got new sides back and top cut for the new cabinet. So we're going to do the assembly of the cabinet, and then we're going to set that aside, and we're going to make the drawer slide out piece that we're going to set the bandsaw on so it can slide in and out. Got some really nice full extension hinges here from our home center, and we'll make just a small, if you will, upside down drawer for it to fit in. So let's get to it. So, got the drawer slides installed, pre-drill my holes, put the screws in. The next thing I wanted to do is determine exactly how wide my drawer needs to be. Some people will try to measure, and you get close with a measuring tape. But if you want it to be exact, you find an old stick. You cut the stick to the right length so that it fits just perfect between your slides the way you want it. Run it forward and back and see if you got any tight spots. In this case, I got a tight spot in the middle, but it's ever so slightly different. So we'll make our drawer the width of this stick and go from there. All right, cabinet number 1, almost done. Got the drawer slide, holds my bandsaw really nice, a little bit wobbly, but you know, you need some play in the holes. Next is to get a door on this thing. There we go. Next will be yellow screwdriver and tiny gold screw. What's the screw for? Oh, I am so glad you asked. Okay, we got cabinet 2 in place. Today we're going to do a little bit different. We're going to do cabinets 3 and 4, but we're going to use old cabinet and, if you will, recycle it into a new cabinet. Here's the cabinet that we're going to take apart and make into 2 cabinets. The upper section with the doors will be one cabinet, and then the middle section there with no doors will be the second cabinet. They'll make the sides, and then we got another piece in the shop that we're going to cut for the back, and we have the birch that we'll make for the doors. So let's get to taking this one apart so that we can go ahead and build a new one. We got the cabinets done. Great. Now we got just one more cabinet left on that wall there. Let me show you. And we need to put one more cabinet right there. And the cabinet we're going to put there is this one here that was accidentally made wrong. So we're going to fix that one up and put it up on that wall. Okay, so for this cabinet, I decided to use some leftover hinges from a previous cabinet that I had. So here's the hinge for the cabinet. You can see that there. It's a overlap type hinge, and I made up a quick mock-up of how that fits. You have to put a rabbet in your door. This would be your door piece. You put a small rabbet in it, and then if that's your side piece like that, the door overlaps just a little bit. You can see the overlap up here. And so that's how these doors are going to be done. Just a little bit different than the others that were just set over the face. All right, we got the last cabinet up, as you can see. Got our colorful knobs on it. Came and put in these little retainers that I had left over from previous cabinet. Little ball fits into the little thing there. That's nice. Gotta put some shelves. I also noticed how dark it was underneath, and so I ended up adding a light there. That'll come in handy as I start to build this up and do things.